morning, everyone. Welcome to Umbrella Saturday. I have Ben Seun Oyajumo, ex-founder of BloomFI, on today's episode of Umbrella Saturday. Usually, we do this every Saturday at 10 a.m. WAT, West African time, to get, founders get clarity on what's happening around their ecosystem, just clarity around, things that looks very blurry to them. On this episode, we're going to be speaking Lagos to Toronto, where Seun Ben Ebenezer Seun Oyajumo will be telling us more about his journey and how he started off from the stage where it is right now, which is being acquired by another startup in Canada. We're speaking the immigrants playbook. Of course, a lot of startup founders are thinking, global citizenship, migration, better life, better startup ecosystem, stability for the startup as well. Investors' money coming in FX, you want to put in some stability to the FX, especially when you're doing your reporting, and some insight into how Sean's journey has been. Sean, just tell us a bit about yourself, your journey, and how you've been a founder. What you were doing before being a founder. Were you in the tech space in Nigeria, and or were you even born in Canada? Maybe that's why you have it easy in Canada. So let's hear from you.
Hi, glad to be, in this space talking to you and sharing my experience. As you mentioned, my name is Ebenezer Seun Oyajumo. Most people here call me Ben or they call me Sean, depending on whether they can pronounce the name or not. Um, I'm Nigerian, Canadian. I moved here, let's say, circa 5 years ago, officially, but I moved permanently in 2021, late in 2021. Before then, while I was in Nigeria, I went to Obafemi Awolowo University. I'm a proud graduate of that institution.
About
I
university.
was yeah of our university. I was a lawyer originally. Got called to.
Really?
Yes, I went to Nigerian Law School in Lagos campus, and afterwards I served in Cross River State. Afterwards, I went into finance. I was in investment banking for, let's say, about 4 years. Helped raise money for corporations, including Fidelity Bank and a few other corporations. Did some M&A deals, some equity capital raises. I worked on a lot of bonds for a lot of government organizations. I wouldn't be mentioning names now because that's a little bit more sensitive. But I helped raise a lot of money while I was in investment banking for like bridges, hospitals, sports facilities, health facilities, airports, and a lot of other like infrastructure projects like that. After which, I had a little stint in the VC space at an organization called Funema. They're still in the space in Nigeria, helping support ventures. And then I joined a startup, also in the fintech space. They're called CoverPay. That company used to be in the agency banking space. Now they're more like in the what I'll call remittance space now. They also have a presence in Canada now. From time to time, and the founders there still talk. I also did some work in the what I'll call family office space. I work for a family office while I was in Nigeria, helping them manage investments, general corporate management, legal compliance, and a lot of other stuff. That's a little bit more sensitive, so I can't really talk about it much. But my work was mostly as an investment banker and a entrepreneurial person, like a founding team member at a startup, where I led products, worked on finance and strategy work, and helped do some fundraising and just supporting startup or like partnerships and a lot of other work. Um, I got my PR in 2019, pretty much earlier than most people, before like the rush. because I had family here, but I wasn't really keen on moving here, to be truthful. I did like my landing in 2020, I think in July. That was during the pandemic, actually. It was quite difficult getting out of the country. My permanent residency was going to like expire in like a week. And I just had to like come to Canada by all means and, through all resources available to me. I came back to Nigeria, I think after like 1 or 2 months. And the plan was, okay, maybe like in a few years, I'll come back here. I love the country. It seems like a beautiful place. Seems like a place that has opportunity and all that. But then when I came back to Nigeria, some months later, we had 2010, 2020, the protest and then the incident that happened then, in which a lot of people were actually,
Worried about the state of
massacred.
the country. Yeah.
Yeah. In that incident changed a lot for me personally. I wasn't at the protest. I was actually supposed to be there that day, but I think I was sick. I think I was down with COVID or something. I wasn't sure, or the flu, because the incident happened quite close to me. I was living in the neighborhood around that time. And that incident plus some other factors basically like flicked on a switch in my head, and I decided like, okay, I think it's time to leave the country. I love my country so much. I love Nigeria so much. I never saw myself living outside the country for like an extended period of time. And I decided to, leave the country. But one thing I always had in mind was that I was always gonna do like my MBA. Before then, I'd even already gotten admitted to like a master's in, I think, finance and economics at a top university in London that I was going to run like partially remote and then go on to like do the program later. But I'd like jettisoned that program, like, see, I'm not ready yet. So I started applying to business schools in Canada. And then literally, let's say, like just like the day or 2 days before I was gonna get my flight here, I did my interview for the MBA program at Ivy Business School at Western University here. That's just outside Toronto, in a place called London. And I got admitted like, let's say about a month to being in Canada. That's when I got notified I was admitted to the MBA program. So my plan was, okay, go to business school, finish business school, get into industry. My goal was to get into the venture capital space. So I moved there, spent a few months with family. My family was like on the other side of the country entirely, on the other side of Canada, that's the west coast of Canada, in the Vancouver area and region. And my school was on the what I'll call the east coast of the country, or closer to the east coast of the country, in Toronto, near Toronto. So spend like some, let's say 3 or 4 months there. Then I moved to Toronto for business school. Anyways, this is where my story, the BloomFi story sort of starts. I was still in the startup I was with in Nigeria, then cover pay. I was still, working for them remotely, doing some activities and all that. Let's say like couple of months into business school, we applied to Techstars Lagos, the first cohort. We nearly got in. I think we got to like the penultimate stage, but ultimately we didn't get into the program. And I was now in the MBA program. I was seeing a lot of opportunity that was sort of open to me, like in this new place in North America, because Canada is very connected to the US, um, especially like literally like 70 or like maybe 60% of the Canadian population lives within like 100 kilometers of the US border. Like the countries are that close, they do a lot of business together. There's a lot of opportunity between the two countries. Our classmates in business school who were born in the US, but who were Canadian and had lived in Canada all their life. Like you hear things like, hey, I'm going to New York for the weekend, I'm going to San Francisco for the weekend. Like it was like a normal thing to them. You get, so I started like opening myself, seeing various opportunities that were possible for me like afterwards. While I was in business school, two things sort of happened. The first one was that I had a friend who moved over from Nigeria to attend graduate school here in Canada, but in a different province. And he reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, Sean, I'm trying to get accommodation and it's very difficult for me, right? Like, can you help out? Do you know what I can do? Like, these landlords are asking me for like 12 months rent or like 8 months rent or like 6 months rent up front. And rent here is a big expense. For most people, rent can be anywhere between 30% to as high as like 60 or 70% of their paycheck. In a month, you can be paying anywhere between, let's say, $600, depending on the location you live, to as high as like $3,000, $4,000 a month. You get, so this is somebody that's coming from Nigeria, converting his naira to, Canadian dollars at a very, steep conversion rate. And landlords are asking him for like 12 months rent or 6 months rent. Just being conservative at that period in time, let's say his rent was $1,000. That means they were asking him for anywhere between $6,000 to as high as $12,000 upfront. At the conversion rate then, that was, I think it was about like maybe 300, 400. It was somewhere around, I think, 400 or so then, if I remember correctly. That
When the
was
when the
like
naira was still good then.
when the naira was still relatively good. They were pretty much asking him for anywhere between, I think it was maybe somewhere around 400 to like maybe like 600 then, if I'm correct. So they were asking for anywhere between, let's say, 6 million naira to as high as 7.5 million naira. And that's not really readily available to most people. Let's be true to ourselves, unless you have like some big, deep pockets because your parents are like really rich. So, I was like, okay, let me check out things. Let me see what I can help with. Then it was like, oh, could you like guarantee me and all that? And I was like, "Ah, dude, I wish I could, but I'm in business school myself. Like my credit score is very terrible. If I guarantee you, they'll definitely reject you because if they just take one look at the profile of the person guarantee you, the person is a student themselves. You get it's not like they have paid employment. So I wouldn't be a good candidate to guarantee you. Like, but nonetheless, if you want me to, I'll be glad to do it. So that was that. And then, we put that issue aside after a while because there was nothing I could really do for him. And then started speaking to people, and then we had like a class project where we're supposed to like there's this thing we do in my business school where they give you an option of two projects. You can either do a consulting project or you can do what's called the new venture project. So the new venture project is basically to imagine a new business or a new company and develop a business plan for that business. So I talked to some people on that and they were like, oh, let's work together. And then we decided to work on a different idea. But in the midst of that, I talked to some other classmates also, including some people who were Nigerians. And I wanted us to do something that was like around credit or like credit transfer. Because one of the things I thought about is the things they use for like measuring you for housing here is your credit score. Is your credit score basically your credit score basically governs your life in North America, whether it's Canada, whether it's the US. Like pretty much getting housing, your credit score. Whether if you want to get a mortgage, your credit score comes into play. If you want to get a credit card, your credit score comes into play. Even sometimes, if you want to get some kind of jobs, they will do a background check, which will include your credit score. The problem was we're like immigrants, right? So we didn't have a credit score. You don't have a credit score until you're like maybe like 6 months or 1 year in the country. Even there, that's if you like go out of your way to deliberately build a credit score. That means like immediately you get in, you open a bank account, and then after like maybe 6 months or 7 months you of opening that bank account, you go and apply for a credit card, and then they will tell you to put like a deposit down for that credit card, and then using that card, you now start building your credit file. So it was just like a terrible space. Yet there was like nothing that worked for immigrants to basically like get a credit score. or at least get one fast enough to access the services that rely on that. So, anyways, when I did that new venture project, and then I did a survey on just generally like newcomers, like and credit scores and all that stuff. Like, okay, when you arrive in Canada or like in the US, like how soon before you could get a credit score, or how easy was it for you to get a house and all those kind of things. And I just put this out, I think, on Twitter, and the response was very overwhelming because I just assumed, okay, yes, I have a large Twitter following, but okay, maybe five people will answer, or maybe it's 10 max. That was what I thought. And then I think in like the first, let's say, 2 or 3 days, I got like maybe like over 40 responses. And it was people started now tweeting at me like, hey, why are you only asking about I think I only asked about Canada. And then people started tweeting at me like, okay, why are you not asking about the US? And then other people from other countries like in the UK or like in other places, in the UK or like Europe, started asking like, we that were like in the UK, who are Nigerians are also like who moves to the UK are facing the same problem too. I was like, okay, seems like there's a real problem or like a real opportunity here. So I went into the form, opened the question pool to people in other places like, okay, if you're like an immigrant like living abroad, can you tell us if you've had problems with this? So people answered from all over the place, mostly Canada, the US, and also people from the UK, even people like I think we got a few people that responded from like places like Germany and all that, but like I didn't really focus on those people to be truthful. The place I was really interested in was Canada and maybe the US. At the end, I think that form got maybe like about like 100 and something, responses. And that was like the initial cohort of people we sort of used as like a early, what I'll say, early audience, so to say, or like early adopters. So from that, started working on the concepts. And then there was this class we did, which was around design thinking then. I think it was called Design Driven Innovation in business school then by Dr. Clark or Professor Clark then at Ivy. And then in that class, there was a particular class where I sort of like just spun the idea out a bit and discussed it with my professor. And the professor basically was very interested in the idea and gave me a bit of pointers or like, oh, some of the directions the idea could take, some ways in which we could maybe possibly provided a solution. So one of the ways we thought about doing it at first of solving the problem was, okay, these people are coming from a country, right? They have like financial histories in those countries. Whether you're Nigerian, whether you're Cameroonian or South African or wherever you're moving from in the world to a place like Canada, you use the bank there. In some cases, you've taken out loans and you've paid them back, or you've paid rent and you've been paying rent. So basically, you have some financial history, you have some rental history. Why don't we think about taking that information from your home country and converting it into the credit score in Canada? So we first spent, let's say, the first couple of months sort of like working on like workshopping the idea. And then we hit what I'll say, the blockers of the financial industry. And I think a lot of people who have built like in fintech would understand this. In trying to like talk to people and prospective partners, Canada has like what they call like the top five banks. There's Royal Bank of Canada, there is Bank of Nova Scotia, popularly called Scotia Bank. There is Toronto Dominion Bank called TD Bank, and a few other ones, CIBC, Canadian Imperial Bank, and a few other ones, National Bank. Anyways, I talked to people I think at about three of these big five about like the possibility of, doing something like this. And all of them were like, no, don't even like put your energy in or waste your time. This is not going to work. And I was like, why? And they're like, okay, first of all, these are credit scores work. there are regulations that govern the credit score system itself, how it works, and there's sort of like government regulations around the kind of information they can take into building someone's credit score. Yes, the banks use the credit score, but they are not the ones that collect the information on the credit score. Those are entirely different organizations. In Canada, that's Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. But Equifax and TransUnion are the two biggest ones. Those organizations are international. They're in a lot of countries, like hundreds of countries. Even one of them has like a local subsidiary in Nigeria called, I think, XPS or something. You get so yes, these organizations are the ones that basically like take information from the banks and from other places like credit card companies and compile it into the credit score. And they have like specific kind of information they take. And they are not set up to take information from one country to use in another country. There's regulation that maybe doesn't allow that, or even internal processes. I think that's one of the funniest things about the financial space or the financial services space generally. Not everything that is stopping you is written into law. Some of it is just company policies, but those companies are very conservative and they don't change their position easily. For you to make a financial services organization change even one line in a rule can take you 10 years to convince them otherwise. They have to first see a way that like it will benefit them financially, and then they, especially in the West, for example, they have to take things into consideration like, okay, what impact will these have on how the regulators see us? What impact will this have on the customers? And then a host of other factors like what's the risk factors around this? You get how can we mitigate it? So you have to probably go to like layers and layers of approval before they can make changes at all. So at this stage, I was like, okay, how are we gonna like get around this? And I started like doing research on company. I've already been doing research on companies that have tried to do something similar or in similar spaces. I found there was a company that went through YC in I think 2016. Um, I can't recall their name in the moment. They're called Nova Credit. And this was sort of originally their pitch also that they want to transfer credit information from one country to another. But over the years, they sort of like pivoted and pivoted and pivoted until what they mostly did was now like alternative credit stuff for like financial institutions, banks, and others like in the US. They I don't know if you know, there's this company in Nigeria called Migos. No, no, no. They used to be called Migos. I think they are called Minds.io now. Yeah, they
Quick money,
basically
quick money.
not quick money, but I think they were instrumental to like helping GTB build quick money and a host of like consumer credit solutions in Nigeria. So they were basically doing something similar to that, where they like help you build like algorithms for you to basically lend to people that don't have like deep credit files. You get, or people that have like unusual credit files. They call them like thin file clients. So they sort of had a similar idea. They worked on it. They'd grown into this big company that was making a lot of money. They raised like at that point, I think they raised like $50 million or something. You get, but they were very US focused and they were doing quite well for themselves. So we're like, okay, these guys went through the same thing. They found another way to sort of like still work in that area, but maybe for like another segment of users, right? So we're like, okay, how else can we tackle the problem? Let's go back. This was maybe like about like 4 or 5 months in. Let's go back to try and see how else to solve the problem. Okay, maybe instead of taking people's like financial information and converting it to the credit score. Let's just go to the root of the problem. What are the real problems that people have? They can't get housing, right? And I think that was like the most pressing problem in nearly everyone we talked to. I think like maybe like 90% of everyone we talked to had that singular problem. Even I sort of had that problem initially when I came to the country, but because I have family here, they were able to like help me ease the process. So like my brother helped me like rent a place, so I didn't have to like put down my own credit score and all that. So that was why I really didn't suffer from the problem personally. But I know way too many people that had the same problem, or people that had family that went through the same problem. So I started thinking about it. Okay, so who are the players in the space? There are landlords, there are realtors who are like the gatekeepers to like getting housing, right? And yes, they ask for credit scores and all that. But how else can we like talk? What else will landlords accept instead of the credit score to give you a house? And then we realized that some landlords, for example, like where this issue that my friend raised originally with me, would accept a guarantee from another person if that person had everything required. The only requirement from those landlords would be that, okay, that person that is going to be that guarantor has to like co-sign the lease. So, okay, at first, we're like, okay, maybe let's do like a peer-to-peer marketplace, like a P2P marketplace, so that people who are already in Canada who are like years of like credit scores and everything, who have spent a lot of time here, can help the newcomers to guarantee them, you get, as guarantors. But we quickly realized fast that that wasn't going to work because, okay, let's say you've been in the country for like 5 years, or let's say 4 years, or 6 years, or 10 years. You've built your credit file, right? You won't put it on the line for a stranger because if you co-sign a lease for someone and that person doesn't pay that rent, you are going to owe that money. It's a debt that is going to go on your own credit file. It can destroy your credit score. You get. Apart from that, you can even get sued for the debt, and you have to pay if you get sued. You get. So it's a very sensitive subject that most people were not even willing to do for. Maybe some people will be willing to do it for people who are their family members, but people were not even willing to do it, even if you paid them. But or if you were going to pay them, they weren't going to do it for like an amount that was a reasonable amount. You get, maybe if your rent was maybe like, let's say, $12,000 for a year. Some people will be like, okay, if you want me to guarantee you, you have to pay me that 12K upfront and keep it in like an account somewhere. You get that sort of thing. So that was not visible for most people because that's the problem we're trying to, avoid in the first place, right? But we started workshopping it, like, problem solving, brainstorming, talking to people, um, doing research. And then in the midst of like all this, um, I can't, I just kept thinking about that whole idea of a guarantee and everything, every day, every day, every day. Like, okay, if landlords already accept a guarantee, is there any other way we could like provide a guarantee? And then in my research, I stumbled. I think I was just basically. So another thing I was thinking of, like, why not like have like a sort of like insurance company that sort of guarantees people, because that's basically what insurance company does, right? They are like guaranteeing people's risk that if okay or something happens to you, we'll pay for this thing. But in return for that, you have to like pay a monthly thing. So I started like researching in the insurance industry. And then I talked to someone at a company called I think it was called BFL Canada. They are like insurance brokerage company. So that person basically told us about all different kind of insurance that were like available generally in the industry. It was like this kind of insurance, he has never heard of it before, or like insurance companies like writing basically covering the risk of someone renting. There's something called rental insurance here, which is basically like a lot of like the big rental companies, the ones that have like apartments, tall buildings, often require from you when you are renting a place. Basically, it's for to protect them if, for example, you burn down the house. You get. So they require everybody to basically carry that. And it's very cheap and it's very like well known to the system. That's what everyone knows. But this sort of rental, it's a different kind of ball game that's not very common or very unusual. But then he told me about this thing called surety bonds. They use them in like international trade. So it's a way of like covering a company's risk. Maybe if you are doing business with another company and that company wants to be sure that you deliver. Um, in Nigeria, I think we call them like performance bonds. You get, but he has a little slight difference that I can't really get into on this call. Anyways, he told us about surety bonds. I was like, okay, what you are describing sort of seems like a surety bond, but like they only use surety bond for like big infrastructure projects and all that. Like he can maybe like do a bit of research on my behalf and see maybe there's somebody that would like offer that in Canada. But like after like 2 or 3 weeks of doing some research, this person came back to me. I was like, hey, nobody does this, at least not in Canada that I thinks of. And it wasn't going to like really work. And we just kept like, okay, how can we make this work? How can we make this work? And then we were like, okay, maybe what we need to do in the short term is like, let's kukuma be the insurer ourselves instead of finding like an insurance company to like partner with you to do that. So in all this while, we've already started serving some customers like before with some early, we partner with some realtors already, partner with some people. In some cases, we would like reach out to landlords and tell them like, okay, this is what we're trying to do, and like we want you to rent to this person. We'll provide like a sort of like a reconnaissance. Like it's like we're slaving our surety when you go to like the police station when they arrest someone, sort of situation. Like you at least trust us that this person will not default because we've checked their records from Nigeria. They don't have any debts. They went back home when they were in Nigeria. They used to pay all their debts on time. They have a good financial record. They came to Canada with these savings, you get. And if you like have anybody that you want to hold responsible, hold us responsible. I was taking that risk. We also had a couple of people who like were early backers of the company who were willing to also like sort of take that risk on behalf of the company and put their name on the line.
So
You
Ben,
get
I have a question for you, right? Let me just
ask it.
I have a question for you. Why
Yeah.
just give up? Why didn't you
Ah,
why didn't you just turn back? There were way too many obstacles for you at the front, right? Why didn't you just give up? One, two, why are you risking your permanent residency for a dream of just trying to build for people who let everybody go and solve their problems? Why did you keep going?
at this point, it was multiple things. So at I started the company, let's say 8 months or 9 months into business school. I did my MBA was like what I would say like a 13 or 14 months program. So I started it towards like the tail end of school. We're not like we'd passed the middle point, but we're not done yet. So it got to a point that I'd focused a bit too much on the company, on the idea and the company instead of like doing like normal recruiting like most people do. So most people that go to my business school end up in consulting. And I think I even got the opportunity to interview for the MBB, especially I think Bain specifically. You get, but I knew I didn't want to do consulting. That was one aspect of it. Another aspect was I'd focused too much. So I sort of like missed the consulting recruitment cycle. That was one. I'd interviewed at other places, Silicon Valley Bank, then in Canada. They really liked me and they were like, okay, when you're done with school, like, come back, let's revisit this. Because when they interviewed me, I hadn't been done with school. They wanted someone to start immediately. Fortunately or unfortunately for me, Silicon Valley Bank collapsed right as we were finishing school.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they like pretty much giving me like a verbal offer, like, see, we love you. I did like a final interview for the role. I just wasn't graduated in school to start the role. So they're like, okay, immediately you finish school, or like maybe like say 1 month to the end of school, just get back into like in touch with like the leadership team and the guys that interviewed you, and then we'll just basically like give you an offer. So we're finishing school at the end of March. Silicon Valley Bank's Wala started in January, and by let's say the first week of no, I think like the last week of February of January or the first week of February, there was no more Silicon Valley Bank. if you, I'm not sure if you were very aware,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
whole thing
the whole,
started like
yeah,
rumors like this
full
week.
of mirror, and the next thing
And
it
then
went down.
over a weekend, I think it peaked on a Saturday. And by Monday or Tuesday, what is it called? The Fed was announcing a takeover of the bank. It was like a very funny thing. I've never seen a bank go from 100 to zero like that before in my life. You get so that was like not going to work. And the Silicon Valley Bank thing had a lot of cascade effect on the general venture and tech ecosystem. There was this venture firm that had also gotten an internship with in Toronto. They were pretty big. I cannot mention their name. Um, Once I started seeing what was happening with Silicon Valley Bank, I was like, this whole thing is shaky and all that, right? You get so I waited a bit and then I got back in touch with them and we're talking somewhere, let's say out of the blue, too. Let's say like 1 month afterwards, they too came back and be like, and they were like, Ben, we're sorry, but this and this and that, we cannot continue with your internship. They pulled the offer. They'd already given me an offer to start on a specific date and everything. You get, they pulled the offer. So at this point, I'd like closed the door to like normal recruiting for everything else. And the area I was focusing on, which was like VC ecosystem, it was like
Also
they
close
dropped a
now as
nuclear
well.
bomb. It was like they dropped a nuclear bomb on that industry. So like it was like I'd burned all bridges behind me. You get because I was pretty much focused on this company at that time. I wasn't paying too much attention to what was happening in the news. Maybe if I paid a bit more attention, I would have, quickly like rallied around and started, getting back. But even if I wanted to, it was not like the best time. So I bought some bridges in that respect. And to be truthful, I really loved the idea itself because even though it wasn't working yet, we had made some progress, to be truthful. People would randomly reach out to me and were like, oh, I heard about what you're working on. This sounds like a good idea. You get like some people had cut us a few small checks, to be truthful, at that point in time. So I can't just say I'm not doing anymore.
So
There was
money was also a motivation.
not like money was also a motivation. It was very small checks, like $5,000 there, $10,000 there. But another thing is, we're taking people's money. We spend some of this on like hiring people to like build some of the tech we're using, right? And all that. And I can't just come and tell people that, okay, I'm somebody that I have a personal set of ethics or principles. I can't just say that, okay, that thing I told you that was working is not working anymore, so I'm not doing any longer. You get, I couldn't, I'm not the kind of person that likes burning bridges for no reason. You get,
Mm.
so, anyways, there was that pressure of, okay, these people believed in you and they sort of like took a bet on you or took a risk on you, and you shouldn't let them down. I didn't want to let myself down. My classmates believed in me, some of my professors believed in me, friends and family believed in me. Of course, not everybody did. My family basically thought I was crazy. Because in the first place, like, okay, you are new in this country, you've not even spent up to like 2 years in this country, like to basically like integrate into the system, and you say you want to be an entrepreneur. You are a stupid person. I literally sort of got that sort of talk from some family members, like, but you better go and get a salary job and like settle down and calm down. But I was like, okay, at least let me see it out to a good conclusion, or at least I wanted to just, and also the impact, especially when you like help someone solve a problem they didn't know how to solve. Some people came to this country with barely nothing. And I got to hear so many interesting stories in that time. Like some people didn't adequately prepare for the challenges they were going to face when they moved to like Canada. You hear people that okay, they came here for school, and because of stories or maybe watching movies or something, some people have this concept that okay, when you move abroad, it's all roses and honey and roses, and it's just going to be easy. And I see some of those things online till date. Where somebody will be like, is it not a pack shift? My brother, even getting that shift itself, it's a lot of work. So you see people coming here with like let's say maybe less than like 5,000. What am I saying? $5,000 is a lot of money. You see people landing at the airport in this country with less than $1,000 in their pocket. That will not get you through 1 month of rent and eating and transportation, unless you are in a very remote community where rent is probably like $600 a month. And even those kind of places are difficult to find. You get? So I was seeing those kind of things, and we just needed to at least when those people start kind of come to us, I'll be like, sorry, bro, we're not an NGO, but let me see whatever resources or whatever introductions I can make. And so when you are able to at least provide some help to people that are struggling like that, it feels very fulfilling. You get, like, emotionally. So, that was also another factor that was
So,
like
so,
sort of
so, so Ben, I'm
driving the
sorry.
craze.
So shouldn't you separate emotions from business? Because I hear that as well, like from what you just said.
You should. You should. Now, I'm gonna tell you straight up, you should separate your emotions from the business, because as much as it can be emotionally fulfilling, there are also going to be days when you feel like a complete failure. You get, he has his highs, he has his downs too. You get, where you feel like a complete failure, and if you let that emotion overwhelm you, you can give up at that moment too. You see, so that's also the part about emotions in building. You basically just need to find a way to maintain a sort of even keel as you are going through the emotions. Whether it's an high, whether it's an up, that's not the end goal. The end goal is get customers, get revenue from them, get profitable, and build an enduring business. Emotions play some part in it, but you shouldn't let them like dictate what you do, like dictates like your motion or your progress or how much energy you are putting in. Yes, your emotions will be involved. There's no way up around that, but you shouldn't let them like take the driving wheel from you. Anyways, that's that. Eventually the whole insurance model worked a bit, and then we started making more progress, and it was at that point we decided to go out there and raise like institutional capital. Unfortunately for us, like it was VC winter out there. Nobody was giving anybody money. Everybody who is, because the whole venture ecosystem sort of like revolved around Silicon Valley Bank. That bank imploding, basically, a lot of venture funds even went out of business due to that. Some people that had already raised money couldn't like raise more money, like companies, some VC funds that already raised money, their money went down with Silicon Valley Bank. So it basically affected the entire industry. I think like the only industry that was basically still getting money then was like AI, because that was when AI was just coming to market. So we couldn't raise the round we were trying to work with. Came down to Nigeria, talked to people I know, some of the people who had backed me in the past on different stuff, former employers and all that. Some of them had been like some of our early backers who gave us some of those checks and all those things. And we're trying to get some money. There are people I should actually shout out here. My former boss, while I was at the family office, was particularly helpful at this point. Some friends and what I'll call angel investors gave us some money. There is a particular person. They run this. They have their own thing called Afro Capital. I do some stuff with them. They were particularly helpful at that point. They gave us like some small checks and all that. You get it? But we couldn't raise like the sort of institutional capital we needed. We needed to raise at least maybe like anywhere between, let's say, 300K to like 500K dollars. Because with that money, we could, and the recognition that sort of comes with it, we could basically like talk to like some big insurance players to maybe like develop a unique product specifically for us. You get, and also you are building a fintech. There's a lot of integration fees. There's a lot of costs involved. You get, and it's not cheap building a fintech. Just to get in payment rails alone, you see things like, okay, come and pay 20,000 integration fee, onboarding fee is $10,000, onboarding fee is $50,000, and then you need to pay like 3,000 monthly infrastructure fee. That's different from just the fee they take per transactions. So it's building in fintech is very expensive. Anyways, that fundraise didn't work out, and we're close to running out of money. Did some accelerator programs, served hundreds of customers at this point. We had a really long wait list of people that wanted to use us that we couldn't even serve because we didn't have capacity. And it looked like the product was maybe going to work. We found a company in the US that writes like unusual risk. They were willing to like write this risk for us. And but their fee was very high. So we're pretty much going to be running at a loss on every transaction we covered. But we believe like, okay, with like VC money, we could basically like run through do that with them for like about a year. So like at least build like really good traction, serve like thousands of customers. And from that, would be able to like go for serious institutional capital, maybe go raise like $5 million or something like in the US or like Europe or somewhere to basically, blow this whole idea up and maybe expand to the US. The fundraising didn't go well, so we're looking at everything. We tried everything. Let's, raise more money from our existing investors. Everybody was telling us it was also like a bad time economically, like in Nigeria. So there was no money coming from anywhere. So we started like thinking, okay, what else can we do? What else can we do?
Sorry,
And
sorry, let me get some clarity. The first backers for you were Nigerians.
yes, we're backers, to be truthful. It was Nigerians, both in Nigeria and Nigerians. Even most of the customers we had came from Nigeria and like West African communities. So let's say Nigerians, we worked with a few Ghanaians and I think Kenyans, but 95% of everyone we're dealing with were Nigerians. Even the people that were helping us here in terms of partnerships were Nigerians, like the Nigerian associations, the realtors, most of the realtors we're working with were Nigerians. You get most of the people that did introductions for us were Nigerian people. We had someone who was like supporting us. His name is Dami. He's a like a AI data scientist, yeah, based out of Toronto, yeah, who he has a PhD in data science, really like brainiac person who basically did a lot of advisory on us on our like model and algorithms and all that. He's a Nigerian. You get so like literally everyone we're working with was Nigerian,
So
to be
this
truthful.
speaks this speaks to local funds, right? Um,
Um,
local
fix
investments.
It speaks to local investment, but it also speaks to community.
Yeah,
That's
true.
the point I sort of took out of that. Like at the end of the day, when nothing is working for you, the people you can really count on is your community. Especially in a new country like Canada or even the US or wherever you go, you get people don't know you. You are this random person from this African country that they might not have even heard of, or you are just a black person to them. They don't know you, they can't trust you. So it's only people that maybe might believe in you a bit because we be Nigerian, you get that kind of thing. That will probably like be willing to take a risk on you, or people that you know from back home who can then introduce you to someone they know here. You get that kind of thing that will like open doors for you. Or people that will be like, okay, because we go to church together and I see you're like a smart young man, and you're Nigerian and you sound interesting, and maybe I do a bit of background check on you and it checks out. Those are the kind of people that will probably take a risk on you. You get so at the end of the day, when you're like doing difficult things or when you need help from people, trust is the currency that you are going to spend because people will have to trust you before they give you their money, either as a customer or as an investor, or even if it's for a grant. If they don't trust you, they will not do anything with you. Even for partnerships, we are going to realtors, we are telling them this is something they have not seen before now. Telling them that a company that is a new company or a newly incorporated company that is not even up to like 2 years old is going to guarantee these newcomers to a landlord. Because also these realtors, they have their own license that if anything goes wrong, they are going to be on the hook. You get the landlord can sue them for breach of duty that they did not perform their due diligence checks like they are supposed to and all that. So they are taking a big risk by partnering with us also. So at the end of the day, even outside fintech, trust is the currency that you are going to have to spend. So having like maybe a good name or like building good relationships with people can be very beneficial in that respect. Anyways, it was in the process of going through all this difficulty, we couldn't raise capital and all that, there are these founders. So there used to be these Techstars in Toronto also. You get, and one of the funniest things about Techstars in Toronto is most of their cohort comes from Africa. So that was what the MD of Texas Toronto used to do, or Sunil Sharma. So he would like bring companies from like Africa or elsewhere to Toronto and then help them like expand internationally. So that's what he used to do. We by the time Techstars they were doing their intake, the company was not like ready for Techstars yet then, so we didn't even like really apply to Techstars. But I was lucky enough to like talk to some of the founders that came in through that program. They did like some sort of receptions for them. So I met like nearly all the African founders that came through the cohort, and some of them we sort of bonded over like our experiences in Nigeria or building for the African market and all that. So we hung out. I would talk from time to time. And then so the option that we're looking at there was like, okay, let's get a strategic investor or get acquired. And we reached out to some companies like in the remittance space, actually, I don't want to mention any names, and also in the fintech space, like in Africa and in Nigeria, or like black founders like in North America. And some of them told us like, oh, we like what you're building or what you have built. The idea seems interesting, but like this is not a direction we're looking to take. Some people clearly told us that, oh, this seems interesting, but this idea is like on our roadmap already, but like for 3, 4 years down the line. So we are maybe not willing to like spend like investor money or like acquiring you or investing in you at this point in time to take that forward. You get so that didn't work out in that respect. But then as we're doing our outreach, some of these companies in Techstars, so one of the things they do is because you are coming from Africa, right? You already have a product in Africa, but now you are raising from investors in North America, and you have to build a product for the North American market. You get, so these companies were like looking for like new business models so they could earn in dollars and all that. So one of these companies, like there were like 2 or 3 of them that I was particularly close to. So some of them had even tried to also like move into like this space, trying to build different solutions. So one of them tried to like provide loans to newcomers to pay that like 6 months rent or 12 months rent upfront. But they quickly realized that, okay, these are newcomers, right? If you give them a loan of that big loan, you are lending someone, let's say $12,000, $15,000. This is the Toronto area, right? And how are they going to pay back? That person probably doesn't even have a job yet, or they just started this job that is like a low-level job. They can barely cover rent. So if they can barely cover rent, how are they going to pay the interest on the loan? You get, so it became like quite difficult for them to go with that model. So one of these companies, we started talking more about them, and we're talking to them like, hey, we're talking to like so and so. Do you know who you can intro me to? Like, okay, we're looking to get like acquired or like get a strategic investor. So one of them was like, okay, we're trying to like get into this space also. Why don't we like talk? And then we talked for like a couple of months and everything, and we got to like an agreement, and they acquired us. That's pretty much it. It took like about 3 months of, let's say between 3 to 4 months of talking, and then the acquisition was done. And then we put out the announcement and all that, and then I was like, okay, I've done what God has sent me to do. I've made some impact. We've had some successes, but it's time for me to take a break. And then I left the business,
Oh,
and that's it. Yeah,
great, great, great. Good,
that
good.
was it.
And thanks for the background. So, as an
Yeah.
immigrant founder, did you ever feel invisible or underestimated?
Definitely, definitely. So, very invisible in that, actually for like trying to get partnerships with like people or organizations, Like I will meet people, I'll go to events like proper like tech ecosystem events or like business events. And I'll meet with people and we'll network in person. It will seem like, oh, you're a smart young man. Oh, you went to this business school. Because my business school is very well known here. It's like the number one or number two business school in the entire country. It's very well respected within Canada. You get. And my profile is very interesting. The things I've done, I've worked in investment banking and all that, right? And they'll be like, "Oh, we love the concept of what you're working on. So this is my email, this is my phone number. Send me an email or send me a text." I'll even send the text right there while we're in that, event. And then you send an email and no one will respond. No jokes. No one will respond. Like the response rate to like our emails was probably less than 10%. And this is not a cold email issue or like we did what didn't I try? I would do A/B testing. Like even like remind people of the event we met. You get that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I was from different emails. I'll send from like the business email, like our official company email. I'll sometimes send from my own personal email. Sometimes I'll send from my business school email. It was pretty, response rate was pretty low. That was one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is even when people respond, there's something here, there's this general perception of Canadians has been very nice, but it's also a cultural thing that a lot of people don't know, in that it's sort of it's a misnomer. Canadians are polite. I won't say Canadians are nice.
Hmm.
From the outside, might look like they are nice. Yeah, they'll greet you, they'll be very nice, but that's why it ends. It doesn't go deeper than that. It's skin deep. So, like, for example, you meet someone like that, they'll give you their email, you send an email, they'll respond to you. They probably already know within that first email or the first conversation you had afterwards that this is not going to work for them or they are not going to do this. But they will not tell you no.
Hmm.
So you people will be bantering over email for like 6 months. Oh, let's circle back on that. I need to loop in somebody. Let's revisit that in 1 month. Before you know it, 6 months have gone. You've wasted valuable time. You've wasted valuable resources. You get talking to these people when they already know they are not going to do this. Even till the end, they might not still not tell you no.
Wow.
You will just get tired and give up.
Hmm.
So that's another thing with the fintech space. Another thing is regulation here is can be quite strict. In Canada, it's a very they're very like conservative in the way they do business in Canada. That's the one difference between the Canada and the United States. In the US is very heavily regulated too, but not as maybe not as heavily regulated as Canada. But also US has this mindset of take risk first. If you land on your face, okay, no problem. When you get there, we'll solve it. But even if you are doing something that might not be totally legal, that like straddles the line, go ahead and do it. Later, we'll paper it over. Like when you raise money or when you get enough customers and you get attention, then the regulators can come down on you, but then you might find your way around it. Here in Canada, they'll stop you from day one. They will like shut you down. Like all it needs is one person to just like put you out there or mention it to the ear of somebody that is regulation adjacent. You get, they will
Hmm.
shut you. Maybe most people don't know this. For example, in Canada, any business that is like a money service business, there's a license called MSB license, which is what a lot of remittance companies license that they get when they are doing business here. Any business that is in that space is literally none of those top five banks I mentioned will open an account for you.
Wow.
They will use various excuses. They will not necessarily tell you that they won't open an account for you. They might even open an account for you, but then that account you won't be able to use it due
Hmm.
to risk controls, anti-money laundering, know your customer, know your business, and all that. They will not open an account for you. So it's a very conservative environment, business-wise. You get. So that's also another thing that, like, sort of, I would say, is an impediment to like startup growth here. So yeah, if there are any other questions, please ask me.
All right. Vanessa says, what was the toughest decision you took when you were a founder?
Um, tough, tough decision we took. I think it was deciding to sell. You get, because to be truthful, we had a product that could work. He had a chance of success. You get, he had a great chance of success, but we just didn't have the resources to take it where it could go.
Hmm.
And also, that's why I think particularly why we sold to the guys we sold to that acquired us. It was because we knew they had the resources to actually do something with the product. You get, because that's pretty much what they acquired us for. You get, it's not for like our team or anything. The product sort of was like fit for the problem, and we had some traction in that area. You get, we've done some of the early work. We've gotten partnerships with the credit bureaus and all that, like to be even like submitting like rental information and all that to them. You get, so that was it. So selling was quite a bit difficult because I was like, okay, should we write this out? Maybe we write it out for like 6 months. You get, but at the point I had to be like, see, in 6 months, we probably wouldn't even have a company at all.
So looking at your runway, you could tell that.
There was little to no runway as of the time we got acquired. You get, yes, okay, we whittle down the team and everything. Let's let everybody go. Let's go batten down the arches. But the thing was, is there, okay, let's even say we decide to do a soft pivot. Are we going to get to like profitability to an extent that it would be enough to like cover expenses and everything? I had to realize that, see, that wasn't going to work.
Hmm.
Yeah, that wasn't going to work. I put a lot of myself into the company. I can't really talk about some of these things out there, but I put a lot of like personal resources into the company, and it was a tough decision on a personal level because it's like you're selling your baby. That's the way it felt like.
Hmm.
You get, but you just have to take the bullet and just, sell the company and then watch other people do magnificent things with it. And I'm happy with it because the guys that are like, acquired us have gone on to do well with the company. They've expanded to the US. They've done incredible stuff. Overall, I think as of the time we sold, we served over like 1,000 plus people, maybe like around 1,300 plus overall that we've served as either as paying customers or people that we've helped in some way. Now the guys that acquired us have like moved that to maybe like close to like 10,000.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, they moved close. The last time I asked them for
Success.
numbers, the last time I talked to them, we talked about numbers. We're going on like 7,000 plus. You get, and
Yeah.
that's what resources will do for you. And don't forget also, they have backing of Techstars. So if I wanted to sell to anybody, I don't think you get I could have sold to anybody else that was maybe like better than us, unless maybe like somebody like BloomFI who have raised like hundreds of millions of dollars acquired us. You get, so that was it. So and they've been executing well. You get, and that was it was a difficult decision, but it was a good one.
All
You
right. So for clarity, Vanessa is also asking, is credit score still money on the table?
So credit score is not. So since then, there have been some developments in that space. Now, literally, nearly all the banks in Canada now offer newcomer focused products now.
Based
And I
off
think
based off what you guys were doing, or just that the industry, there's a lot of immigrants coming into the country, so let's create something for them.
there was a lot of immigrants coming into the country, but I think we also brought some sort of attention to the space in our own way. It's not like we paid for media, but we got some media attention. I was interviewed by The Logic, which is a big startup focused like publication here in Canada and a couple of other places. Other people like came up afterwards trying to do stuff in similar or adjacent areas. There are people trying to do stuff for like settlement of newcomers. There was also a company, I think they were called Vanbora. I think they might have shut down. I'm not sure. They might have pivoted like for like the 15th time. That also try to do stuff. They are like Latin American guys. So they ended up working with those Nova Credit guys, those guys that went through YC in
Yeah.
2016, and they helped Nova Credit break into the Canadian market. And Nova Credit has relationship with like credit bureaus like across like I think about 100 countries. Fortunately or unfortunately for Vambora, they basically just like built a roadmap and basically do the way it seems to me is like they did all the groundwork for those guys to basically like capture the market. So I think about two or three banks that are working with Nova Credit in that if you are a newcomer, Nova Credit will help profile you for the banks.
Mm.
And then the banks can then like basically like give you like a credit card that has like bigger limits and help you build your credit score faster. You get that's another thing. A lot of organizations now have credit builder products for newcomers,
Mm.
even apart from us. Some are fintechs, some are like established fintechs. You get there's Co basically provides credits to like people that I would call like subprime risk people. So people who have like terrible credit scores and all that. You get. So that's what they do. So they now have a credit builder product. Other people now have a credit builder product that basically allows you to build your credits at an accelerated rate than it would be if you follow the normal process. Before now, to build a credit file enough to be able to like rent a house or something, which will probably take you maybe like 1 year or 1.5 years. Even 1 year is what's being optimistic. But now, I think you can do that now in like about 6 months or 7 months now.
Mm. Interesting.
Yeah. They've cut it down. You can get a credit. Nearly all the banks now have credit card stuff. So credit scores still affect your life, to be truthful. You get, but it's somewhat easier now to build your credit. You get partly due to the attention we brought to it and that other people brought to it. So yeah, that's it.
So what was your biggest mindset shift or cultural difference that faced as a founder moving from Africa to North America? What was the cultural shift? You said you worked with a startup when you were in Nigeria, you worked with the venture space, you did a couple of family office, or you did a family office as well, which is still funding. You worked within that space. What was that mindset shift? And I'm sure at the very early stage when you left in 2020, it was still COVID, there were
Yeah,
things
yeah.
startup that had raised, fintech was also still being a thing. I think it was that period
Big
OP has also raised money. Um,
money. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Um,
there was Paga before then as well. What was that mindset shift that like, you just realized that
I would say it's two ways. One thing I realized in that building or building is difficult anywhere in the world, whether it's Nigeria, whether it's in the US, whether it's in Nigeria or Canada. Um, there are some similarities and some differences. So one of them is that building is difficult anywhere. One of the things I found is like here in Canada, there is a bit of like institutional support, maybe not in money wise, but
yeah,
there's like
structure.
programming that they will like, try and guide you a bit about some business processes, about how to build a company and all that you get, which can be quite beneficial in putting together company structure and doing things in a certain way. You get that might even like reduce your time to finding like product market fit. You
Mm,
get it can be helpful, and also sometimes they can also be helpful in like finding like early customers or helping you gain early visibility. I went through I think about like three programs. There was one called Lift Off in Kitchener-Waterloo. There was the Land and Expand program at Toronto Business Development Center. They're like an accelerator slash incubator in Toronto. There was BA, that's Black Entrepreneurship Alliance. So there are a few of those programs. So there's a bit more programming. Nigeria didn't used to have that, to be truthful. We didn't used to have that. There's a lot more of that now in Nigeria now. There's, Tony Elumelu Foundation and a couple of others. But as of this time, when I started BloomFI, there was not a lot of that available in Nigeria. A lot of the programs we have now, they were just like coming up. You get, and the way probably weren't as well structured. One thing that is also similar is that it's difficult to raise capital anywhere in the world.
Mm.
That's one particular similarity between Nigeria and Canada. It's very it can be very difficult to raise capital here. Maybe it's a bit, don't let me say it's a bit easier. It's still difficult to raise capital. And another similarity in that in both places is that raising capital is still at the end of the day dependent on who you know.
Mm.
You get and not necessarily who you know, like as in maybe your dad is a governor or something. It's like, okay, what professional relationships have you built?
Mm.
You get like who have you worked with? Where did you go to business school? That kind of thing. It plays a strong impact. Like I said, trust is the currency you're going to deploy when you're like building like a company or something, right? It's people that trust you that will give you money. If these people don't have a basis on which to trust you, which is they've worked with you, they know you, they're your family or something, or somebody introduced you to them, why should they give you money? You get?
Mm.
So that's one way in which like Nigeria and Canada are very similar. Of course, they are structured, they are VC funds, they are like incubator and accelerator programs. There's no longer Techstars to run, so that program shut down due to changes in the Techstars structure itself. But there are a few programs here and there that still like provide some early stage capital, but you still need traction for that, right? What happens a lot these days, or that has always sort of happened in Canada, is a lot of founders in Canada go to the US to raise money.
Mm.
You build your early product here, and then you
Still.
go to the US to go and raise money because there's a lot of money, much more money available in Canada, and also you can bid for the US market. So one mindset shift that I would say changed for me, but I won't even say it's Canada that sort of gave me that mindset set shift. It's the US because I went to the US a few times while building the company. And we tried to raise money there, but I didn't have the resources to go and sit down in the US and, spend like a month or 2 months because once again, it's trust, right? You have to meet these people. Yeah, you have to have multiple conversations for them to like, believe in you and then give you a check. Is that the US has this mindset of just go for it. It's
Mm.
like Nike, just do it. You get.
Mm.
They believe that if you want to do something, you should just do it. Maybe in Canada or like in Nigeria, you would, even in a way, the US and Nigeria are sort of more alike in that way than Canada. Canada is a more like process-driven place. Like, okay, you first need to do this, you first need to set up a corporation, you first need to apply for a license and all that. Canada is not very go, 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 go in like the mindset. Yeah, it's like I said, it's a very conservative society in a lot of ways, especially in business. The US is very like face the problem, solve it. You get the US has this mentality like you can even sell a product that doesn't exist yet. If you can get users, then you get then you just tell them that the product is not ready. We'll get it ready for you in 60 days or 30 days or 90 days, and then you can even take people's money up front. You get and they won't think of you as a fraudster or anything. You
Mm.
get that might not actually work in a place like Canada or Nigeria. You get that kind of thing. So it's different entrepreneurial experience, I would say, in the US. Of course, there are few differences that are not major between Canada and Nigeria. Also, business culture is quite different. Like I said, it's very conservative, and you also have to understand the cultural nuances of how things work here. Canada is a very also relationship-driven place. Like for a lot of things, you probably need an intro. One of the things I noticed from the guys who acquired us was like, for example, because they've gone through Techstars, right? And they have like that seal of approval. You
Mm.
get, and they have the backing of like the MD of Techstars. If he does an introduction for them, they'll probably get a much more better response. Like their response rate is like miles above ours.
Mm.
You get like if I send an email to a company and this person sends an email to a company, you will definitely get a response. Either because somebody will have sent an email upfront telling him like, hey, my boy or this person I invested in is going to be responding to you. You get. So I think at the end of the day, it all comes back to the same thing, which is trust.
Hmm.
You get. Yeah.
All right. Did being an immigrant founder open new doors or add more friction?
I would say both, but I would say it had more friction than open doors. So they're like black focused organizations, like entrepreneurship organizations, that have become active over the past few years or become more active over the past few years. There's one called the Black Founders Network, out of University of Toronto. There is a very big accelerator slash incubator in Toronto called DMC at Toronto Metropolitan University. They have like a black focused stream. They do a lot of work with like immigrant founders and like black founders also. So there are these programs that are sort of like interested in black founders or like immigrant founders, right? They don't necessarily give you money up front. You have to go through programming or get grants along the way as you go through. They're like milestone-based programs. Um, but I would say he had a lot more barriers in that that trust wasn't there. You get to
Yeah.
get you open doors for you, like you reach out to people, you want to talk to someone at the bank, they will even be wondering, like, hope this person's not a Nigerian prince. You get all of that. You get what I mean? When yeah, like hope this person's not a fraudster and all that, right? So that trust factor was there. But also the immigrant thing also has its advantages in that there's community, right? Like if you can put in effort to actually build relationships within the community, you can actually find people who are going to be willing to help you out. And also other immigrants of other nationalities also might also be willing to help. I've seen that happen also. Like Indians, for example, will be like, hey, I love what you're doing. This could also work for Indians. Okay, what can I help you with? You get that kind of thing. Like Ghanaians will help you out. People from the Caribbeans will also help you out. You get that kind of thing. Because at the end of the day, they all understand that immigrant experience that, okay, we are all like new to this country and we're all like suffering the same problems or we have like similar difficulties, right? You get, so that could be very helpful in that respect. So that's another way in which the immigrant experience is helpful. Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you from a founder's perspective now, and I want you to wear two hats, the founder and the investor hats that you had when you were in Africa, Nigeria to be precise. What are the biggest misconceptions that African founders have about building globally
One
or
is
building for a global market as well?
building for a global market. One thing I noticed somewhat is that we overbuild as Africans because of the sort of our user base or like the economic demographics of Africa, right? Our value propositions tend to be overbuilt. You will see somebody build something minor in North America, like Canada or US, and give it a few months, they have hundreds of thousands in ARR or MRR. You get in Africa, we tend to overbuild our value propositions because before somebody will take money out of their pocket and spend in Nigeria or elsewhere, it's difficult because they just don't have the financial capacity to spend money anyhow. But yeah, $10, $5, $20 is nothing to maybe the average person who is not an immigrant.
Hmm.
So if you have like a global product that can work for the international market, you should definitely try your best to sell to North America. I'm telling you, that's one thing. Number two, apart from the overbuilding thing, which is sort of relating to overbuilding the value proposition. So because of that, some of us always think like, oh, our product is not ready for the global markets yet. Like, okay, why would I use something that a Nigerian has built?
Hmm.
My guy, you don't know whether what you have built already can serve like 3 or 4 different customer segments in North America or in Europe. These people have a lot of disposable funds. If you see sometimes the kind of things people spend money on in these places, it will blow your mind. There used to be a time that people used to buy pet rocks on the internet. You get, and people built, it became like a really big rave in North America at that point in time. You get.
Yeah.
So don't assume that, what's it called, that what you have built is not going to work. You get test it out with that market. If you have the money to do like Facebook ads, to do like inorganic marketing to those markets, try it out. You get push it out there. You never know, it might work out.
Mm. Mm.
You get so that's also another thing. Another thing I would say from maybe both an investor and founder perspective is I think more founders should build for global markets instead of for just Africa. You get like, yes, Nigeria has a big market. We are allegedly we're over 200 million people, or close to 200 million people. But what percentage of that population actually has economic capacity to buy what you are trying to build?
Mm.
You are trying to build a software as a service product, or you're trying to build a technological product. Yes, even if people are like tech savvy enough now, they have smartphones and all that, they can use your software or they can use your solution. There is just a lot more, it's just a much more difficult market to build for. And I think this is something I also realized in retrospect. If I want to build now, I don't think I'll build for purely immigrants.
Anymore.
I'll probably try to maybe build for the diaspora,
Mm.
like people who are like maybe second generation, like yeah, maybe they were born here or they've moved here and they've settled there and they are already making money, to be truthful. Because those people now have money to spend. You get. So look to the global markets and try and I think because I feel like we have the capacity intellectually, technologically, and all those things. You know, a lot of founders in Nigeria or like technical talents go on to work in really big space. There are Nigerians at Twitter, there are Nigerians at Google, there are Nigerians at nearly all the fan companies, be it Netflix, be it Amazon. You get there's literally nowhere you go in this world in tech that you won't find Nigerians. I've seen Nigerians work for really big tech companies in Europe, companies that you've not even heard of that are doing like very deeply technical stuff. You get more people should have more global ambitions. Like, don't just look at a problem in Nigeria. Look further afield. Maybe more people need to travel, or maybe have a way to like interact with the rest of the world so they can see other problems to solve out there. You get try and build for the global market. I believe that's like the next frontier for like African entrepreneurs. You get, and also it's going to make your ideas more fundable
Mm.
because it's going to be easier for an investor like in Europe or the UK or America to invest in a company that is building a solution that they can identify with than you building for Africa. I think that's also like a disconnect, right? Most of these investors don't understand what you are building in the first place because it's not a problem they have. I tried to talk to investors there and I was like, okay, a lot of new farmers have a hard time getting housing, and they'll be like, why would you have a hard time getting housing? There was this speech I did at Amazon offices here in Toronto while I was building BloomFi. And in the first, let's say, 2 minutes of my pitch, I could see the reaction in the room.
Like, what's
That
this?
the yes, the only people who got what I was saying were people that were immigrants or immigrant descent. So people were like brown colored, you get, or like Asians or like black people that understood what I was saying. Like, oh, if you're a newcomer to like Canada, you might have a hard time getting us in. And they were the people on the panel who were actually judging, they were nearly all like locals, right? They were looking at me like, what is this guy saying? But then I made like a joke about like, oh, you get like if you don't pay your rent and you run away from Canada, you get I'll come after you in your country. That sort of thing was like a joke. And then the immigrants in the room started laughing. Like the people were like of immigrant origin, were like of Asian origin, like Sri Lankans, Indians, Pakistanis, Nigerians, Ghanaians, and all that. They started laughing because they sort of understood the whole jackpot mentality.
Yeah.
And then the people on the panel now looked behind, like, why are these guys laughing? Because they couldn't even understand it.
Relate, yeah.
You get so that's so if you build something for like the global market that is not just like the Nigerian market alone, or let's say the African market alone, or like let's say the we ourselves, then it's gonna make things more, it's gonna make your idea more fundable. No jokes.
Okay,
If you
let's balance the conversation a bit, right? Because a lot of African founders on the call, or even those who will watch afterwards, right, would are building to solve an African problem most times, right? Something
yeah.
is there for Africa. Balancing both worlds, right? That's the stage where you now, you scale, right? And then you start to look at the global market. How do you balance this? Because again, some of us are still back home. The only problem we see or we can relate to are some of the problems that we see here. The problems that we build for are the problems here. And I hear that, for you, build a product that is scalable, build a product that, goes beyond borders, right? So that, you get some more funding and is relatable in those markets. How do you balance these two worlds?
There are multiple ways to do it. There are programs that focus on like foreign founders in North America. There's this accelerator out of New York called ERA. ERA has a specific program for international founders. They give them some funding and they bring you to like the US for like about I think like a 3 or 6 month period. There are also a couple of other programs like that in the US. Canada also has a sort of even a visa class for that called the startup visa program, where you can come and build your company. Like, yeah, you might not get it initially. You might have to first come in like on a visitor's visa, and then when you're here, you apply and you go through the process and all that. And um there's DMZ, there's Black Founders Network, there's Africa Impact Initiative, and a couple of other like organizations that help with like that sort of stuff. I also have my friends out in Silicon Valley who have like been working with for let's say the past 1 year post BloomFi called African Founders. The African Founders also like trying to scale into like North America. We're working on a residency program there that we've made some progress with. For example, there's a founder or we worked with who moved from, he's Kenyan, but he moved from Ghana to the US.
Hmm.
He was a uni student when he founded his company in Ghana and he was making some progress. And then he moved to the US to come and build his company. And they're doing really well now. They're doing really well. They've raised some funding, they're called Rupe. They're making real good progress. You get so number one is like there's programming available, right? And all that. So you should try and take advantage of that, number one. Number two is if you've built your company and maybe you've already raised some capital locally and you believe there's opportunities you want to take advantage of in North America, one thing I've seen people do is like find local talent here or like partners here
Hmm.
to basically get a foothold in the market.
Hmm.
For example, Leatherback has like people on around there in Canada. I've met one of those people before. I know BloomFI brought people on in Canada, maybe one or two people over, let's say, the past 1 year. You get other companies have done similar stuff where they hire talents that understand the local environment. It might be on a part-time basis, it might be like a consulting gig. Maybe you have like an area you are exploring and you are trying to basically explore. Basically, like maybe check out business models that could work. You can do like customer discovery with
Hmm.
people in those places. You can do it remotely.
Hmm.
For example, if you're serving like the immigrant community or you're serving the diaspora, you can do that. The guys are on board. I'm not sure if you know on board. From what's it called? The Nest Coin Fox.
Okay.
Um
Jelly.
yeah, you
Yeah.
get we're chatting, I think, on Twitter or something a few weeks ago. They're launching in Canada soon, I think. Maybe sometime in the near future. As they scale to. You can do that sort of stuff. You can reach out to people that have already built in those places, or that you know, or that you can reach. Social media sort of like breaks down barriers these days. You can take advantage of that. Another the third thing is like that founder I mentioned. You can just take a risk on yourself and come to North America. You can, if you can get like a B1 visa or an O1 visa, or if you can get like a visitor's visa, that basically will give you like 6 months, right? You can come and spend like 3 months in North America to get a lay of the land and continue building your company in Africa while you're doing that, right? Even their founders are shuttle, their companies are Africa focused and Africa based even. You get most of their users are in Africa and they even partially live here. You get they'll come here, spend 1 month, go back, spend 1 month in Nigeria, that kind of thing. I know people will do that. You get. So the main thing I would say is taking advantage of the places you are or the places where you want to go. You just need to, at the end of the day, being an entrepreneur is finding a way to make things work
Work.
for you.
Mm.
Yeah, even though it doesn't look like it will work, you just have to find a way to make it work at the end of the day. You get. So that's it. So I'll dump it down to three things. One is programming that is already available. You get startup visa, accelerators, incubators, university programs. A lot of universities have like startup focused programs in the US and here. And second one now be is like, engaging with like the local community or the local talent or contacts in the space. Yeah. And the third one is you yourself as the founder or a member of your founding team just doing like what I'll call like a long visit to like understand the space.
Mm.
Come down, spend a few months, you know, maybe if you are the kind of person that has the resources to like do annual vacations, make it a working vacation.
Mm.
Come to Canada, come to Toronto, come to Calgary, go to Vancouver, or even go to San Francisco and go and spend a month or two.
Mm.
You never know what might be possible from that. You
Mm.
get, if you have the resources, if you don't have resources, it might not be visible for you. You get, but or you can just take advantage of programming available. Maybe if you do a pitch competition and they will sponsor like your flights, ticket, and visas and all those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
That might be to just, come and spend a few weeks here also,
Mm.
that sort of thing. So there are ways to scale, or you can just be there and just keep engaging with people, and maybe you see that one of your products or one of a facet of your products resonates with the international audience or like a community abroad or like a user segment, yeah. And then you can just divert your inorganic marketing or
True.
organic marketing, whichever one, to focus on that area. And then when you see you are selling enough to people in that space, then you can talk to maybe like one of your partners or whatever relationships you are formed and be like, hey, I would love to.
Mm.
You can do it the old-fashioned way, build a relationship first, and then after a while, maybe you have partners you're working with and be like, hey, I would love to visit the US or I would love to visit Canada, I would love to visit Europe. You get, because let's say, for example, you're building a company that is in international trade.
Mm.
You get, or maybe you're helping like exporters or importers or something of that nature. You're helping them move money, or you're helping them do like certification to meet like customs and all that. You get, and you have partners in these countries. You've worked with them with 2 or 3 years. After a while, if you tell them like, "Hey, I would love to visit your country," they might even point you to resources. Even some of their governments have programs for that sort of thing
Mm.
that a lot of people don't know because they are not in that space, right? Um, for example, there is a lot of countries do what is called like trade facilitation trips.
Mm.
You get for organizations to like visit their country if you're already doing business with organizations in their country. So they will like it's usually handled through like their high commissions in Nigeria. So Canada has what's called a trade commissioner service. You get, and they usually have officers at like all their consulates are like embassies. I've met with the team in Nigeria like over the past year. We've had a few discussions. And if you are already doing business with like a Canadian company, sometimes they bring Canadian companies from like Canada to come down to Nigeria, that sort of thing. They
Mm.
do like at least, I think one of
Like a
those,
trade
like,
exchange.
yeah, sort of like a trade exchange thing. You get, sometimes also they allow like organizations to bring companies from Nigeria to also come and visit Canada.
Okay.
That's sort of what happens. So you get, if you pay attention and you're like in communities, for example, I'm a member of Premier Business Network and I sometimes see these sort of opportunities there. So yeah.
All right. What worked? What didn't work? And what surprised you? Fundraising as an immigrant.
Fundraising as an immigrant, much more difficult than I thought it was going to be, partly due to the environment then, the Silicon Valley Bank and general VC space issue, and then the general economic conditions in Nigeria. That's number one. What surprised me, what didn't work, I would say, is running a diffuse fundraise. So there is, to be truthful, I think there's sort of like a structured way to do a fundraise, and
Mm.
there's a way most of us do fundraise. Most of us just like start reaching out to people as we're building, right? And then we build those connections, and then we, as people start giving us commitments, sometimes we start collecting those checks. So I'll be like, okay, we're not raising yet. When we're raising, we collect those checks. You get, and there's the way, let's say maybe YC or something will tell you to raise, like, okay, you want to like gate your fundraise to like a 3 month or 2 months period where you drive fear of missing out among investors, and then you collect checks and then you stop fundraising. I would say the answer is somewhere in between the two. You get, that might not necessarily work for an immigrant founder because the people around you don't have money.
Mm.
You get, the people around you don't have money, and you don't know a lot of people that have money. The typical founder here probably has friends and family that will probably even give them like their first $100,000, or they went to business, or they went to school with people, you get, and they've probably worked with someone, you get, or they can network their way somehow to like people that will be willing to at least, give them that early
Early check.
100, 200K early checks, right? You get, before then they go and raise VC. For an immigrant founder, that might not be possible. You might have to do like a community fundraise that is more like crowdfunding, which comes with its own problem. Because then it might be like, some people be like, I like what you're building. Show my guy 1K. You get that kind of thing. You get 1K here, 2K there, 3K there. I've seen that work for some people. You get some people who collect all those small checks, and over time, before you know it, you've raised 100K. You get, but it might take you like 1 year or 2 years to even raise that 100K, right? You get, so I would say it's very situational. It's very situational. There are no hard and fast rules in these things. Yes, but I would say like we should still try and structure our fundraising a bit more. And also maybe we should have a lot more confidence, the American style, you get.
Mm.
Because that's also another thing I've noticed here, like the sort of dreams or the sort of scale you should aspire to when you are talking to people that want to give you money should be really big. Don't just keep it small, like, oh, I'm trying to build this thing for just Africa. I'm trying to build these things for just me. Your addressable market should be like, I want to build for every immigrant in the whole world.
Shouldn't it be realistic as well, Ben?
You should be realistic. That's where your roadmap comes into play. Like you can be like, okay, I want to build for all immigrants in the world, but for our early customer discovery cohort, we are working with immigrants from Africa or from West Africa or from Nigeria. You get, we're just using that to refine the product, and then we expand the market. But our market is all immigrants in the world.
Okay. Let
Yeah,
me
that's
throw
just an example. Yeah.
let me throw open the mic if there are questions from the audience. Gabby Praise, Mr. Shola, Vanessa, if there's still other questions there. But before they mute themselves, what would you do differently if you had to scale BloomFI?
If I were to have the opportunity again, like if I wanted to build a similar company, one of the first things I'll probably do differently is I would say from day one, I'll focus more on monetization,
Mm.
like from scratch. Instead of like focusing on product, I'll focus on monetization first.
I think I've
Which
I think I've heard that before where they say focus on the money.
focus on the money. It's not a bad thing to focus on the money. You get. I also think maybe this is me personally, or maybe like my own upbringing. Like, you don't want to feel like you are greedy and all that. But my brother, focus on the money first. If you focus on the money and you solve that, everything else will sort of find
Align.
it will align. If and how do you focus on money is by finding the customers that will actually like pay to use your product, right? If people are paying your product and they are using it and they are making money, you are making money, right? And you are profitable, even if it is not a lot of people, but that is probably going to be more impressive to an investor that you have people that are using your product and you are making money as an early stage founder than having 1,000 users or having 2,000 users or 3,000 users that are not paying you.
Mm.
You get focus on the money first.
Mm.
It might not work for everyone, but I'm going to tell you that's probably what I'll do differently. Focus on the money first. And also another point I would love to make here is founding a company is not for the faint, it's not something to be taken lightly. I would advise most people that want to build to at least have some sort of resources for like the early stage before they go in. Yes, you can be maybe playing around with your ideas and all that. And then maybe if it gains traction, you can, start devoting more time to it. But as maybe founders from like the sort of backgrounds I come from, like, you are from Nigeria, you probably don't come from money or you don't have like family money and all that. I would advise you to maybe if you have a job, first keep it for a while and be building this thing after work, you get, and on weekends until you make some traction. Then after you have started making money, that company has made enough money, significant money, that maybe it can even start paying you a salary or something. Then take the dive. You get. Or maybe you can then slowly reduce your hours at work, maybe switch your work from full-time to part-time, that kind of thing, right? Or maybe take like a working leave. You get tell them like, that's something that's also possible in like places like Canada or like, North America. You can be like, oh, I want to take a sabbatical. You don't actually have to tell people that you are going to go and build a company. You get, I want to take a 3 month sabbatical or like a 6 month sabbatical. I'm dealing with some, mental
Mental
health challenge.
health.
You get, so you can like take a break for a while, but I wouldn't advise anyone to just like jump in the deep end. You get,
Mm.
uh, after like, it can be quite difficult, especially here. The bills here don't stop. If you are building in Nigeria, you have maybe your family or extended family around, you can rely on your friends and everything. If you're like an immigrant and you're abroad, it's a totally different experience building in that respect because the bills come every month. You pay rent every month. You pay your phone bill every month. You pay your utilities every month, water, power, transportation, everything. You get right. It's monthly bills, and it's a different kind of pressure from Nigeria, where you pay rent at beginning of the year or end of the year or something, and then the rest of the year you just save up for the next rent, right? So things can spiral very fast for you here financially if you're not careful. You get it? Maybe because you think you have an idea and you resign your job to go and focus on startup, and maybe you don't have a lot of savings when you did that. And then 6 months in, you've exhausted whatever savings you had and you haven't raised money yet, and the company is not making money.
Mm. And you don't even have another job.
Ha, you get you might not easily find another job immediately, right? It might take you a while to ramp up back to like getting another job. What if the economy is bad? That sort of thing. Or your industry is not necessarily the kind of place where you can easily get a job quickly. You get that kind of thing. You
Mm.
get. So what I would advise most people, if unless maybe you're like a seasoned founder, you've been a founder before, so you know all the risk involved, you get. But if you're like a first-time founder, I advise most people, you get start building on the side first. You get make focus on the money. Focus on the money, both on the company side and on the personal side. Focus on the money. Let the money guide you a bit in the direction you're going to take. You get focus on the money, find a path to monetization before going all in. You get focus on the money in your personal finances. Make sure your financial situation is in order before you take that jump. You get let the company be enough of its own thing, of its own entity, maybe before you leave your day job. Or maybe you can like get consulting gigs and all that you've already lined up and they're already paying you. You get on the side before you resign your job. So you know that even though you don't have a job, there's this thing you are doing from time to time on the side that is going to be giving you a little bit of money. So that's it.
That acts as your own way, you know.
Yes, that's as your personal runway. You need personal runway. That's the easiest way to describe it. You need personal runway. As a company needs runway for its own operations, for you to hire staff, for you to build the technology, for you to pay integration fees, for you to pay whether it's Zoho you are paying or it's Google you are paying for workspace, you get for you to pay hosting fees, for you to pay AWS and all that. Have your own personal runway. Because at the end of the day, if you are not good, the company won't be good. You are the company at the
Mm.
early stage.
All
You are
right.
the company. You get, yeah. So yeah.
All right. So what were some critical pivots that helped you reach product market fit?
I think I've sort of already gone through that a bit in the background, seeing the ideas or like the concepts that were going to work and the ones that weren't going to work, from initially wanting to just, help people move their credit scores, realizing that wasn't going to work, to then deciding to find a way to like help people get housing,
Sure.
then trying to talk to insurance companies and then realizing that also wasn't going to work, to us actually now trying to like take on that burden ourselves, you get, which somewhat partially worked, so to say, you get, and then moving onwards to that, to like now finding a partner that was now willing to like cover that risk. You get pivoting or like is, I think I would say, is normal. Is the extent to which you pivot that is different from like idea to idea or from company to company, right?
Mhm.
Some companies will do like hard pivots, like they're totally doing one thing and they'll move to something new entirely. Like an example was is it Slack, right?
Yeah.
Slack was building something I think around maybe video or like something else entirely. It wasn't even like productivity software they were building at all. I think it was something like in the consumer space. But then they realized that the messaging app they built for that was the thing that people engage with the most. You get, and they decided to focus on building like that messaging app, which has grown into a $1 billion company that has been acquired now by Microsoft, I think, also, or Salesforce. I can't remember who acquired them. So just let the data lead you in that respect, in terms of pivot. You get, there will be something that will resonate with someone or a group of people around your idea. It might not necessarily be the flashy side of things or the side you think was going to work. You get, but just let the data lead you in that respect. Don't be married to your idea. You get that has led to more startups failing than I can count, including people I know. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on compliance and regulatory readiness for across regions? But before
Um,
let me just go back to pivot a bit. We've seen a lot of companies also pivots over here in Africa, right? Or in Nigeria, they just pivots to different products. Shouldn't money also push you towards pivots, right? So for instance, you have a product, people are willing to pay for a future, which is not a product, right? Then you can, scale up that future to become a product.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That can happen. Sometimes a future will grow into its own thing and it gets to dominate, right? Um, okay, let me give an example. It's an hypothetical example, it's not like a specific company. So one thing that you sometimes find is your product can work in terms of a user adoption.
Mm.
Like a lot of people are using it in one respect, but people are not paying for that.
Okay.
And then you have some people that will tell you that, okay, let's say you have like hundreds of people using this part of the product and it has heavy usage, but you have like 10 people only using this part of the product, but they are willing to pay you, and they probably even like it's a pull factor instead of a push factor. It's not like you are the one asking them that, Oga, will you pay for this? They might be the ones even tell you that, Oga, let me give you $10, $5, $20, $100, $500 for this aspect of the product. You get now you are stuck because these people are paying, they are willing to pay for these aspects. These other aspects, it has usage.
Yeah.
You might have to follow the money
Mm.
because at the end of the day, it's the person that is paying that is your customer, not the person just using the product. Unless maybe you have like a Facebook style model where the customer is the product. You are just getting user data so you can sell that user data to somebody else or use it for advertising or whatever else that is going to work for you, right? So in that respect, you might have to take or follow the money instead of like user engagement or user adoption.
Mm.
So these kind of things happen. At the end of the day, let me give you an example with one of the recent companies we've seen. A lot of us heard a lot about Okra over
Yeah.
the last few weeks or months, right? Okra has a phenomenal like technical product, and they sort of pioneered open banking in Africa in a way. You get it, right? And even we explored using their product at a point in time, but we had ended up using like another company that has like something built on them and Mono. You get so we didn't end up like using them directly. They have a product that works, but this is me speaking from as an outsider. I don't know the internal mechanics of that company. But I believe that they probably at the point realized that yes, we have all these people using our product, but we're not making enough money from them.
Mm.
Because if they were able to raise that level of funding that they raised, that means they showed a lot of traction. And I knew companies that were using Okra.
Mm.
So people were definitely using them. But the unit economics was not working for them. They were probably losing money for that usage they were getting, running up AWS bills, running up costs in terms of the data providers. That's the financial organizations that they are pulling data from, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So then they needed to find another way to like monetize those customers, something else that they believe would work for those customers, or they are starting to see early signs that it could work. Which is probably why they try to do the whole data play, right? Like sort of becoming like the AWS, like moving towards like being a data hosting or data provider, whatever they call that solution that they were trying to build, right? You get because they realize that okay, this is something that definitely, literally every business that already is on their platform needs and they are paying maybe like in dollars to these other people. What if we could like convert them to do this with us instead? And where maybe they already had the capacity or this sort of stuff. So that's the kind of thing you will see when it comes to like business, right? You get you have to sometimes make tough decisions that requires you sacrificing one thing that works for something that might possibly work. You get. By the end of the day, even though it looks like it's working, it's not really working because you're not making money from it.
So something similar to what I also see in Africa is that founders build infrastructure, right? But there's that perception that the infrastructure already exists in the diaspora or in in other markets. You are just going to build and then you tap into that infrastructure. But from some of the things you said, some things didn't exist that you needed to build the infrastructure for it, right?
Yes, definitely,
But there's
definitely.
the perception that the infrastructure already exists in the global space. In US, the infrastructure is there. You just need to build and tap into the infrastructure and then you scale, right? But
I think I get your point, right? And I would say I understand why people have that mindset. And it's something I too believe. And in a way, yes, infrastructure exists. Compared to, let's say, Africa, a lot of the rails you need have already been built in a lot of cases. It's because we're building a novel kind of thing that is like new. It's new in a lot of ways, right? We're building for a customer segment that people don't really pay attention to in the first place.
Mm.
So because of that, they did not even try and build anything at all. The infrastructure does, these are people who are falling through like the infrastructure gaps that already exist. So the infrastructure exists, right? The banks already exist. The credit bureaus already exist. You get.
Yeah.
So the thing was, it was like we're taking infrastructure in Africa and sort of marrying it to the infrastructure here because those two infrastructure were not speaking to each other.
Mhm.
That's sort of what we're trying to do, right? In our own case. But in a lot of cases, the infrastructure really exists. The postal system exists. Yeah. There's so much infrastructure that even you'll be surprised if you are trying to build in some spaces. There's already regulation in place. There's a lot of government bodies. There's a lot of private companies. You get. But maybe if you're trying to build something that is very niche, like we were trying to do, right? Or something that is very new to the to the business environment here or like for a user segment that is new here because immigration or at least at the scale we're seeing recently is pretty still new to these places. All the Nigerians in Canada, I don't think we are up to 1 million. Canada just became a country, just became 40 million like last year. You get.
Mm.
So even all the immigrants that Canada has seen in the past, like because this upsurge of all these move, right, of immigrants to Canada is over, let's say, over the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years. In all of that, I don't think all the immigrants that have moved to this country are more than 10 million, if it's even up to 10 million. You get. So normally they don't understand that experience.
Mm.
That okay, you are new to a country, so you don't have a credit score. To them, a credit score is something you get by the time you are like you go to university, you go to college. By the time you are like 19 or 20, you get, even if you don't go to college, that is you finish like secondary school and then you finish high school and then you just go into the labor markets, like you are working at Tim Hortons or you are working at McDonald's or you're working at a store or at a store. By the time you're like 18, 19, you already have your credit score because maybe your parents already gave you like they already had you as like a user on their credit card from the time when you're like 15 or like 16 or something. You get, so they can send you to the grocery store, that kind of thing. So it's a totally new thing, which is why it seems that way. You get, that's why in a way it seems like we're building infrastructure.
Mm.
But to be truthful, I would say the core infrastructure is already in place in these places. What you might need to do in a lot of cases is you might need to extend that infrastructure a bit more. It's not like Nigeria where you are probably going to have to like build or buy warehouse like Jumia and Konga had to did when they were like starting off, right? You
Mm.
get, that's a totally different level of company building entirely. You can't even compare it to like somewhere like Africa. Somebody like Okra had to build like, open banking infrastructure from scratch because it didn't even exist at all. First
Mm.
of all, you need to first have the banks that will work with you, and then you now go to those banks, understand their file system, understand a lot of their processes, and then find a way to extract that data from within their system. You have to build new security measures and all that to ensure that information doesn't leak. It's a totally difficult
Very.
it's a another level of difficulty, like let's say 5x or 10x more difficult when you are building these kind of things in Africa than when you are building it here, to be truthful. In a lot of cases, whatever you're building to, maybe you just need to extend that infrastructure, build some little features or use cases that don't already exist. You get? And then maybe then you will now become the new infrastructure because whatever you're building, somebody will be able to build on it here. That's also another thing. Once you build something and it works, quickly people will jump on board in a way you'll be like surprised. Yeah.
Okay, so that takes us back to the compliance and regulatory readiness. How do you get compliance and regulatory ready for a global market?
So compliance and regulation is very context specific or like jurisdiction specific, right? Um, Canada has different regulations, the US has different regulations, and even attitudes to it. The EU and the UK have different regulatory mechanisms, right? What I would say is you can learn a lot from the internet itself. And thankfully now there's now ChatGPT and a lot of other things like that. But of course, don't rely excessively on like LLMs because they can also give you like wrong information sometimes because there's also like outdated or false information on the internet also. Um, One thing I've also realized about here is people are often willing to like do what they call like coffee chats with you. You get like you can just like if you reach out enough, you might find somebody that will be willing to just like give you like 15 minutes or 20 minutes just to learn about their industry or their space. So that's also another thing I think that works on the regulatory aspect. You don't actually have to pay like tens of thousands of dollars to a consultant to help you navigate regulation. In some cases, you might have to because some of these regulations can be quite like thorny in some places. For example, in Canada, like I've mentioned the MSB license, right? If you're trying to do something a little bit more customer involved, maybe you are doing like lending or something like that, you would have to check out something like the Retail Payments Act here in Canada, which it can be quite stressful to deal with because it has specific on like the sort of way you can basically structure a product that involves lending. You get and how you have to structure your interest, how you can advertise to customers, how you can a lot of stuff goes into it, and you can also get regulated at multiple levels. Like there's the provincial level, which is like the state level in Nigeria, and there's like the federal level, which is like for the whole country. So I would say regulation is very context specific. Just make sure you understand the space you are getting into before you go into deep. At least have some understanding of it. It doesn't necessarily mean that in all cases you would definitely need a license or you need to like, but in some cases you might definitely have to. There was this story or this incident. This actually happened in the US of a Nigerian founder that was actually jailed for anti-money laundering and control of terrorism breaches. They were running a remittance company, and he was tried and he was actually sentenced to a jail term. I think it was even considerable, maybe like 5 years or more in the US. In this case is a very unique case. From what I read about that case, they were operating for a while and they actually got flagged by their bank and they got sent a notice by like FinCEN. FinCEN is like a body in the US that sort of like manages payments and all that, which told them like, oh, you need to address like these breaches, these areas, these areas, these areas. They basically communicated to the regulators that they have fixed those breaches, but they did not. And even there's their own internal communication in their companies where they found, I think the FBI found that they were basically like bragging to themselves, like, oh, don't worry, like those people, we got like one over them, like they be that sort of stuff. Like we got away with it. Don't worry, nothing will happen to us. If they come back, just tell them we have done it. You get that kind of thing. And they didn't really do those things. And I think they traced a particular transaction or something, that like are not even one. I think like multiple transactions that were like fraudulent and all that, that they were like the main vector through which those transactions happened. And they started an investigation and then started like monitoring them. Anyway, Sha, long and short, they got arrested. They were tried in court. They were sentenced to jail. No jokes. You can Google it. Nigerian founders, remittance jailed. I think it was somewhere in the south. I think it was like in Texas or somewhere. You get either Texas or like in the Atlanta. It's somewhere in the south of the US, if I can remember correctly. And those guys are in jail now. So regulation, while the US has that attitude to regulation, like you can take a lot more risk. I think a lot of people should also be aware that when you are playing in regulated environments, yes, you can, when you are small and you are early, you can start off taking a few liberties here and there. But the moment you make progress, you get, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, the moment you start making progress and you are making money, please fix your regulation as soon as you can. You don't want to, because if they arrest you here and you go to jail, that's the end. You get, because it's gonna be difficult. You are not like the average founder, who has deep industry access and all that. That are like the Theranos founder who their partner is now raising money for a different company. If you go to jail, that's the end though, as a black founder. At least likely,
Okay.
likely that's the end.
I don't know if there are questions in the audience. Let's check again. I have just two final questions for you, and then we call it a wrap. I don't know if there are any questions in the audience
I
from
have
it.
a quick question.
All right. Mr.
Okay.
Shola, good to see you.
Hello. Ben Seun, whatever the best word to call you. But thank you for sharing today. Thank you for your story. It's been very inspirational, actually. So I had like maybe two questions in one. One is, so what are you doing now? Well, maybe I missed it at the beginning. Maybe you introduced that in the beginning. So what is your focus now that you've done the exits and you've cashed in? That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, um, I like your point about number of immigrants in Canada because I think sometimes I mean, I live in the UK, and actually when you look at it, I think 6% of the population is black, not just Nigerian, no, black. So there is a small minority, but I do think, like you've just done, the small minority is packing a big punch. So I know you talked about what you would do if you were doing it again, which is revenue beats funding for breakfast. That's my favorite quote. But like, what else are you seeing? Like, maybe that's the question I'm asking. Like, what else are you seeing in the diaspora that could help founders in Nigeria? I know you talked earlier about, think global, but maybe just in terms of operational. So it's kind of two questions in one. What are you doing now? And then how do you see the future evolving? So, yeah.
Okay. What I'm doing now, so I've been working with an organization called Macaulay Gidado. Um, it's more like a venture studio slash venture consultancy. We have different brands. One of them is African Founders that basically supports like immigrants and immigrant founders like who are moving to like the US or like setting up their corporations, like market entry, products, and all that. I've been with them for circa a year now. You get and I've been doing a lot of work with like clients and all that, like most consulting type work, incubated like another venture through them in collaboration with other people. Through them, I sort of like shared it a bit on Twitter a while back. I sort of left that venture after a while because long story that I won't get into now. We're exploring a product for also in the diaspora market. It was like a marketplace type product. So we're incubating that under like African founders, but I've left out the other co-founders are working on it. But I'm also leaving my colleague Gidado very soon. By the end of this month, I'll be away from the organization. I'll be I'll also be in the fintech space. But now it's going to be like in a more institutional capacity. I'll be sharing that, let's say in about like a couple of weeks, maybe like in the next 1 month. You get, I'm still gonna be based in Canada, based out of Toronto. You get, but over the past year, I spent time between Nigeria, Canada, the US, helping out with, African founders and also like basically learning more about generally the entrepreneurial and venture ecosystem in these places, right? And seeing the opportunities that are also possible. That's one of the things I've also been doing, like opening my eyes to opportunities possible. But for now, I'm not starting a new company at this point. I need a breather. You get the chaos of building is not easy and it takes a toll on you mentally and physically and in a lot of other aspects. So I'm just gonna like building like an enterprise capacity for a while. You get internally at an organization, at an institution, and stay there for a while. But on the opportunities that I'm seeing in the space, one of the things I've been seeing and I've also been trying to like sort of talk to other people about to pay attention to is to find other ways to provide value to the diaspora community other than just remittances. You get everybody just keeps building the same thing or what looks like the same thing. Don't let me say the same thing because it's not necessarily the same thing, to be truthful. There is a
Yeah.
lot of nuance and difference between the different products in the payment space out there. But payments is not the only thing in finance. Payments is just like the rails on which finance runs. Finance at its core is basically taking capital from people that have it, providing it to the people that don't have it, so they can use it to create more value, and then returning that capital to the people that originally gave it with some extra value added. That's what really finance is at the end of the day. Finance is disintermediation or intermediation, whichever word you choose to use. So, and I'm happy to see that BloomFI acquisition because it sort of like validated my thesis that, which is my core thesis when I was building BloomFI was that you can take people that have left one country for another, use their history from back home or like their experience back home to like provision them for financial products or financial adjacent products in another country. Yeah, and BloomFI acquired that company in the UK called Pillar, right? And now they are basically introducing lending to their customers. That's something I also tried to work on. You get, we saw some early traction there, but funding was not available, to be truthful. To really, that kind of thing is not the kind of thing you can do with like small money, like in your pocket, like $30,000, $30,000. If you want to do lending from day one, you need to start with serious money, maybe like $100,000, because by the time you write like loans to, let's say, 50 people, you've exhausted the entire like funds you have, right? So you get, I expect to see more products like in the lending space. That's one. I expect to see more value added services that sit on top remittances, like e-commerce oriented products. I don't want to give the game away because of, like you said, the guys I'm no longer working with, they're still working on stuff in that respect. So I don't want to give the game away. So people are still building around that e-commerce space in that respect. But another thing I think people are also not paying attention to is Dirty December is a thing. A lot of people come from abroad, back home. Thousands of people who are coming to spend money. Why is nobody building for that? I even there was a product I was thinking of building for a while, but I feel it's a future, not a product. Yes, which is why I sort of abandoned it. I even bought a domain for it, which I left aside. I don't want to. It sounds it's around a dirty concept. You get, yeah. I expect to see more people building in that segment. You get things around like the Dirty December concept and people like building for like the second generation also. So instead of building for people that just moved, what of the people that have been here for years? Some people have been in these countries for 10 years, they've been there for 20 years. Some people have built houses back home. They bought houses in America, in the UK, in Canada. You get, they have disposable income. Some of these people want to invest back home. And that's something I say a lot with immigrants, right? A lot of us still believe in that, I need to have a family house back home, or I need to build a property back home. I know people that they don't even have houses abroad. They are building second houses in Nigeria. Yeah, you get, and we see incidents of like, okay, what is it called? You send money back home to somebody to help you build, and then the money will disappear. What's happening there? You get, I believe there's opportunity there. And even apart from that, some of us still have our parents back home in Nigeria. These parents, they are getting older. Who is taking care of them? You get, I believe there is a lot of opportunity if people just take a deeper look at it. You get, I don't want to give the game entirely away because I know people
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
building
sense. Thank you. Thank you.
building in adjacent areas. You get, but a lot of us live here. We have parents, or let me give you even an example. I'm willing to share this one. I'm not like the target market for this, but like there are people whose parents are well-to-do in Nigeria, but all the kids have moved abroad. And these parents, they are getting old. Who is managing their assets? I believe that is like an easy opportunity for somebody to take advantage of. It's something I'm looking at myself like, okay, if I know somebody that is willing to build in this area, I would definitely advise them because that's an area I particularly have interest and experience in because I was in the finance space in Nigeria, right? In the finance and asset management space before I moved abroad. You get, so for quite a long while before, I became a founder and then I moved to Canada. So who is doing that? There are people whose parents, I'm from Osun State in Nigeria. I grew up around Ile-Ife. And there are places where you go, you see like palatial mansions that are totally overrun with bushes. And when you ask, it's always the same story. They are dead, their children are abroad. What's happening there? And I'm sure we're going to start seeing that in our own generation too. Because these days I see literally, I even meet my hops on the streets in Toronto. Like I'll be in Toronto, I'll just see somebody randomly that I never expected to see there. You get, or like I'll be talking to somebody and the person will be like, hey, I ran into this person in Amsterdam, or I ran into this person in London or in Manchester. You get, a lot of us jackpot. But what of our parents' assets? What of our parents themselves? What of our families? What of our extended families? You get, what's going to happen there? Yeah, I believe there is a lot of opportunity. Even, okay, also, we are also here abroad, right? We, the diaspora. There are people that were born here themselves who identify a lot with like the African experience. They want to connect back home. They don't know how to other than just going for Dirty December. Who is helping these people reconnecting to their heritage? People my age and all that, they are having kids, right? Yeah. You want those children to have a connection to back home. You want them to learn the language. Who is providing the language classes for them? Who is teaching them Yoruba? Who is teaching them Igbo? Who is teaching them Hausa? Again, who is teaching them for full day? Yeah. So I believe there is opportunity there. Even apart from this, some of us, for example, this is something I used to talk about on social media, on Twitter specifically, with a couple of friends, like back in the days, that, okay, I keep hearing, and I keep seeing people also talking about this, also in the US especially, like, okay, we want our children to grow up in maybe a specific kind of cultural environment or like moral or ethical background, where they have like community, they grow up around people that look like them, but are like people that are well educated, that are like believe in religion, that sort of stuff. So we sort of want to like create our own communities. Is anyone exploring building like, sort of like HOA, the style they have like in the US, like purpose-built communities for people of the community. Maybe like you build like a 20 house community and it's only like for people within the Nigerian community or like people within the African community that you're going to sell it to. You get, you get. So I believe there is opportunities in the diaspora. We just need to go beyond what already exists. To be truthful, it's also a lot of risk because you are building things that don't exist. And building something that doesn't exist is probably much more difficult than doing a little tweak to the things that already exist. And it's a lot more risk. You get, so not everyone will be willing to take that risk, but if you can take that risk and succeed at it, I'll definitely be willing to support in any way I can, even if it's just to be hailing you and be sharing your stuff on LinkedIn and Twitter or whatever. You get, so that's it. I believe there's a lot of opportunity out there. You get, and we
Yeah,
just need to
thank you so much.
pay a
Yeah.
bit more attention. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Ben and Mr. Shola. Any other questions from the audience for Ben? But Ben, if you had to write a one-line playbook, which is what we call this session for an immigrant tech founder, let's even take out the fintech founder. Let's just say an immigrant founder. What would be a one-line playbook?
Use all the advantages you have.
What's that exactly?
Use I don't know how to explain it better than that. Like, just be, don't let anything hold you back. Shame or fear, don't let anything hold you back. Go all in, use all the advantages you have, your community, even if it is to tell sub stories, because sometimes some communities or some people love to hear sub stories like, oh, he came from Africa where they didn't have light at all. He only sees light once in 6 months. If that's what you have to, the stories you have to tell to succeed, do it. Don't feel like, oh, I don't want people to see me in a certain way. Sorry about that. Go all in. Use all the advantages you have. If that's what's going to help you, use it. If it is the sub story that, 100 children die every day in Africa because they don't have food. It's not like these things are not true. Yes, they are not the complete picture of Africa of where you are coming from. But just success is success at the end of the day. You get
All right.
succeed. That's what people want to see at the end of the day. That's what will benefit the ecosystem. Because when you succeed and if you make the mega box like some people, you'll be able to fund other people to come up afterwards. Succeed first and then think about the ramifications later. Yeah.
How did you balance your African identity with the Western markets? How did you balance it?
I think for me, like
African, Canadian every time.
So because of like the upsurge in immigration, so a lot of immigrants, a lot of Black people you tend to see these days, like in Canada, are African or of African origin. Either they're like second generation, like their parents moved a long time ago and they were born here, or people that moved there very young or came here for school. Those are the ones that are like very deeply settled in, or people that moved in the past few years, like myself. So because of that, it's not really that difficult. And there's always like you can always like find, so Toronto is one of the is a very interesting place because you can always like find African food, yeah. Even like in the small city where my business school was in London, Ontario, I could find Nigerian food. I pretty much ate Nigerian food through my only Nigerian food. I pretty much till now still only like eat Nigerian food. Either by making myself or like buying from outside. So that's also another way to like, stay in tune with my identity. And also when I go to like the African restaurants and all that, I'll definitely hear somebody speaking Pidgin or somebody speaking Igbo or Hausa or Yoruba behind me. So that's also sort of like, keeps you in tune. If you are the religious type, there are Nigerian churches or Nigerian adjacent churches or churches that just have like a big population of Nigerians there. There's a church I go to in downtown. It's not a Nigerian church by any means. But funny thing is, I got there first day and I saw the church on the internet. It was just close to where I was living and I wanted to go. And I got there and I found Nigerians. And they're like, I need you're part of the church. They're like at least like about like 10 Nigerians at the church. And it's a pretty small church. This is a congregation that like total size is maybe on like peak days, maybe like 60 or 70. You get, and
Mm.
that's like in downtown Toronto. So you just need to find your own way of like staying in touch with the community. If you are the partying type, they're like Nigerian sports like lounges and all that. You get the big cities in Canada are particularly like good with that. Like in the Nigerian sort of make sure our culture sort of shows in that we have like the Nigerian associations, we have the Nigerian clubs and the Nigerian restaurants and all that. So yeah,
All right. Thank you, Ben.
that's it.
Let's have your question. Your question. You can just unmute yourself.
Okay. I think this should be the final question, right?
Yeah, this is the final question.
Yeah.
Oh, someone dropped another one. Ben, you're going nowhere.
Okay. Let's make it two more questions and then after that we'll wrap up. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Ben Seun. This was a very enlightening session. I have a question. You mentioned something about lending and how you sort of need a huge capital base if you have a huge amount of funds to go into lending. How possible is it to be sort of like an aggregator for lending companies? What are the opportunities in that space? Because there are some companies who may not particularly offer lending directly, but then they aggregate financial institutions that offer lending if a particular space, maybe it's in the construction industry or in education, say student loans, particularly international student loans. What are the opportunities in that space, and how much regulation do you need to aggregate financial institutions in that space?
So,
Do you need to have APIs and all those things to work? Yeah.
one thing, yeah, like I said with the whole regulation thing is that regulation is very context specific, to be truthful, in that if you are like an aggregator, since you're not like directly lending, you might not even need to get like to like deal with like the regulation that affects lenders. You get, since in a way you are pretty much just providing like an information service in that sense. So this is the sort of situation where you might need like a consultant to come into play, or you might need to do a lot of research yourself. Look at, you get like, oh, what rules govern lending? You get, download those acts themselves, read through them line by line. You get, or just put it in ChatGPT and help you, or like notebook LM to basically like, and tell it what you are doing. You get that kind of thing. And basically like, okay, no, look at this particular line. Does what I'm doing fall within this, or might it fall into it? You get, sometimes also you can even sort of send an email directly to regulators. So that's the kind of things you can do here. You get, it's not like Nigeria where if you write to SEC or somebody else, they might not respond. You
No,
get, I'm not
they're better now. They respond. So
no, I know SEC is actually response, but like you might write to the CBN and they won't respond to you, or you might not even want to bring their attention to you.
yeah, well, I think that's the idea.
You get, but in a place like this, you can write to them, and that doesn't actually mean like they will just have it in for you and be waiting for the day you launch and just shut you down. You get, you can write to them and ask for clarification. Like there was a time, there was something I was thinking of around like lending adjacent, and I reached out to the body in Ontario here that governs like lending and like financial products. You get, and I think I had like a 1 hour meeting with them. You get, they had like two or three different people on the call, and they answered all my questions. And where they couldn't answer my questions, they told me like, okay, maybe this is not for us. Maybe you need to talk to the federal body. You get that kind of thing. So that's the sort of stuff you should like watch out for. But for if you want to aggregate lending, one thing I will ask you to think about is what advantage are you providing? This is not purely from just a consumer perspective. What advantage are you providing to your users or your stakeholders, whether it's the lenders themselves or it's the consumers that they don't already have? Why should they use you? That should be the question. You get, because there is deep credit penetration in these countries, to be truthful. Myself, like I can go to a bank and get like a credit card, which is probably going to take care of most things that I need. Even if I want to like buy a car, I can walk to a car dealership and just give them my ID, what is it called, credit information, sign a few forms, and walk out to the car within like a matter of days max. You get? So in that sort of situation, what advantage are you bringing? Or is there like what sorts of advantage are you bringing for the user and for the lenders themselves? Because if the lenders can reach those customers easily, why are they going through you? Or is it that, okay, maybe it is the immigrant market that you're helping them penetrate? You get, there might be an opportunity there. You get, so there is so much. It's just going to, you're going to require context-specific research. Is what you are trying to do that will determine what you actually do. There's no like one size fits all that I can just give you like a sort of magic wand that will resolve it for you. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Ben. I think that you've been speaking. All right, Vanessa, can we hear you?
Let's make this the final one, please. I'm sort of tired. Yeah. Please go right ahead. Let's hear your question.
Vanessa, can you unmute yourself?
I don't think they.
So let's wrap it up. Sure.
Hi. Sorry, I had to check something. So, the question I want to ask is, looking back, what will you tell your getting started self that would have saved you time or pain? So, what would you have told yourself? Like when you started, what would you have told yourself? Just
There's so much. And I think I mentioned it in the course of this thing, but not everyone was there from the beginning. So one thing I'm saying,
not even
focus.
here from the beginning. So,
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can go ahead.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, focus on the money first. Like money. If you have three things to focus on money. Money, like, how is this thing going to make money? Who is going to pay me to use this thing? And try and get those people first before you try and get users and build a product. If you can, focus all your energy on money. Money will not lead you wrong in this thing. You get? Who is going to pay me to use this stuff? How are they going to pay me to use this stuff? And then get those people to pay you, like physically pay you, not promise to pay you, not survey that, how much will you pay for this stuff? Let them pay you. Even if it's something they're paying you, let them pay you. You get, then from there, if other people are now clamoring for the thing, you can then like have it adjacent stuff. Well, don't try to solve problems for the whole. Of course, the whole world can be your addressable markets. You get, in terms of like having a big dream or like building for scale. You get, but find those people that are going to give you money first for whatever you are trying to do. Don't, if possible, don't even build anything. Don't. Although writing code is now easy because of LLMs, although the code can be janky and just weird, right? But focus on the money first. You won't go wrong. I think it's a lesson I sort of had to like learn the hard way multiple times, even before this also. But maybe because I bought into the hype, like, okay, this is now North America, is a different market. You get? So I sort of forgot some of those lessons. So I had to relearn it again. Focus on the money first, and you won't go wrong. If you find users who pay you, you have a business. If you don't have users who are paying you, you don't have a business.
Thank you very much, Ben, for this very insightful session. I know it was 4 a.m. in Canada when we started to speak, and you took the pain to come speak to us as founders. Next week, we'll be having someone who is an advisor on Umbrella as well. His name is Mr. Bade Aluko. He's an advisor. He used to be an advisor with Techstart, Toronto as well. And he's based in Cape Town. He will be coming. He's the managing partner of White Hibiscus Capital, which of course is a venture capital company who is coming to teach us about preparing for funding the startup playbook for investment readiness. I think that's also another interesting conversation. And next month, which is August, which will be the final one for July, and then in August, someone on this call who I'm trying to, finalize his conversation is Mr. Shola Shinoiki, who would also be coming on one of the Umbrella Saturday special to also give his own delivery of the special. Ben, I don't know how to thank you so much, but you've opened my mind as well. We've been building for Africa, and then we've had people say to us, why don't you just extend this product to MENA, that's Middle East and Asia? And we're saying, no, we're building for Africa. We're just building for Africa. It's Africa. Maybe it's time to also even think in that perspective. But what would be your last word to us at Umbrella? Do you think is a
Definitely, I would advise like exploring the MENA space. Their startup ecosystem is growing really big, and they they are looking for founders, be wherever you are from the world, to that you're building interesting stuff, especially if it's locally applicable to move there. I know specifically Qatar has like programs for that. I also know or have friends or like acquaintances who are building their startups out of Dubai. You get a friend of mine who's in the what I'll call the stablecoin or crypto remittance space is building out of the UAE. I think their company is called Mula. You may have heard of them. They're making waves in the Nigerian space. They're doing really well. But another thing I'll also say is like, please, if you're building, please try and take advantage of international opportunities. There is the local currencies in Africa are always going to keep fluctuating. This is not a cost. It's just the way of the world. You get. So if you can sell to an international market and earn in dollars or pounds or whatever, it's going to put you in better stead in every way possible. And if anyone needs advice or introductions or anything, you can always reach out to me via LinkedIn. This is my name on LinkedIn. But if you just search my name, Seun Oyajumo, everywhere, you can pretty much like find me on LinkedIn. You get it. If you also know me on Twitter, I tend to like be active quite a lot there. So you can definitely reach out to me. And thanks for doing this, Ayo. I really appreciate the opportunity, to share my experience with other people who might be interested in building. And I love what you guys have been doing, supporting the founder ecosystem. And definitely, we've also been talking about other stuff. We'll definitely do some other stuff together in the future. And that's pretty much it for now. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ben, once again. And to everyone who joined the call, thanks so much. The recording will be available on YouTube. We'll also do a recap to founders around what has been said on this call and how to approach these. You can get it everywhere on LinkedIn, even in your mailbox. We would be everywhere sharing this with you. I think we will make it a date again next week. On this time, I say bye to everyone. Bye, Ben.
Bye. Bye. Yeah.